Hi everybody, it's me, Yaya. And yesterday I read from all the way up through Leviticus 13. So today I'm starting with Leviticus 14. And of course I'm reading in the Amplified version because I feel like it just explains things a whole lot better than King James or other versions. Okay, so chapter 14 of Exodus, Law of Cleansing a Leper. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, This shall be the law of the leper on the day of his ceremonial cleansing. He shall be brought to the priest at a meeting place outside the camp. The priest shall go out of the camp to meet him, and the priest shall examine him. And if the leper has been healed of the infection of leprosy, then the priest shall give orders to take 2 live clean birds and cider wood and scarlet string and hyssop for the one to be cleansed. Next, the priest shall order that one of the birds be killed as a sacrifice in an earthenware container over fresh running water. As for the live bird, he shall take it together with the cedar wood and the scarlet string and the hyssop, and shall dip them and the live bird in the blood of the bird sacrifice over the running water. He shall sprinkle the blood 7 times on the one to be cleansed from the leprosy, and shall pronounce him ceremonially clean. Then he shall let the live bird go free over the open field. The one to be cleansed shall wash his clothes, shave off his hair, and bathe in water, and he shall be clean. After that he may come into the camp, but he shall stay outside of his tent for 7 days. On the 7th day he shall shave off all his hair. He shall shave his head and his beard and his eyebrows, even all his hair on his body. Then he shall wash his clothes and bathe his body in water, and be clean. Now on the 8th day he shall take 2 male lambs without blemish, and a yearling ewe lamb without blemish, and 3/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with olive oil as a grain offering, and 1 log, about a pint of oil. In 1 log, and then it says in parentheses, about a pint of oil. Okay. And the priest who cleanses him shall present the man to be cleansed and his offerings before the Lord at the doorway of the tent of meeting. Then the priest shall take 1 of the male lambs and offer it as a guilt offering with the log of oil, and present them as a wave offering before the Lord. He shall kill the male lamb in the place where they killed the sin offering and the burnt offering, in the sacred place, the courtyard of the tabernacle. For the guilt offering, like the sin offering, belongs to the priest. It is most holy. The priest shall take some of the blood of the guilt offering and put it on the lobe of the right ear of the one to be cleansed, and on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot. The priest shall also take some of the log of oil and pour it into the palm of his own left hand, and the priest shall dip his right finger in the oil that is in his left palm, and with his finger sprinkle some of the oil 7 times before the Lord. Of the rest of the oil which is in his palm, the priest shall put some on the lobe of the right ear of the one to be cleansed, and on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot, on top of the blood of the guilt offering. The remaining oil that is in the priest's palm shall be put on the head of the one to be cleansed. The priest shall make atonement for him before the Lord. Next, the priest shall offer the sin offering and make atonement for the one to be cleansed from his uncleanness, and afterward kill the burnt offering. The priest shall offer the burnt offering and the grain offering on the altar, and the priest shall make atonement for him, and he shall be clean. But if the cleansed leper is poor and his means are insufficient, then he is to take 1 lamb as a guilt offering to be waved to make atonement for him, and 1/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with oil as a grain offering, and a log of oil, and 2 turtle doves of 2 young pigeons, 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, such as he can afford. One shall be a sin offering, the other a burnt offering. He shall bring them on the 8th day for his ceremonial cleansing to the priest at the doorway of the tent of meeting before the Lord. The priest shall take the lamb of the guilt offering and a log of oil, and shall present them as a wave offering before the Lord. Next he shall kill the lamb of the guilt offering And the priest is to take some of the blood of the guilt offering and put it on the lobe of the right ear of the one to be cleansed, and on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot. The priest shall pour some of the oil into his left palm, and with his right finger the priest shall sprinkle some of the oil that is in his left palm 7 times before the Lord. The priest shall put some of the oil in his palm, on the lobe of the right ear of the one to be cleansed, and on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot, on the places where he has put the blood of the guilt offering. The rest of the oil that is in the priest's palm shall be put on the head of the one to be cleansed, to make atonement for him before the Lord. Then he shall offer one of the turtle doves or young pigeons, which are within his means. He shall offer what he can afford, one as a sin offering and the other as a burnt offering. Together with the grain offering, the priest shall make atonement before the Lord on behalf of the one to be cleansed. This is the law for the one to whom there is an infection of leprosy, whose means are limited, for his ceremonial cleansing. Cleansing an infected house. The Lord further spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, When you come into the land of Canaan, which I am giving you as a possession, and I put a mark of leprosy on a house in your land, then the one who owns the house shall come and tell the priest, I have seen something that looks like a mark of leprosy in my house. The priest shall order that they empty the house before he goes in to examine the mark. So everything in the house will have to be declared unclean. Afterward he shall go in to see the house. He shall examine the mark, and if the mark on the walls of the house has a greenish or reddish depressions and appears deeper than the surface, the priest shall go out of the house to the doorway and quarantine the house for 7 days. The priest shall return on the 7th day and look, and if the mark has spread on the walls of the house, he shall order them to tear out the contaminated stones and throw them into an unclean place outside the city. He shall have the entire inside of the house scraped, and the plaster that is scraped off shall be dumped into an unclean place outside the city. Then they shall take new stones and replace the contaminated stones, and he shall take plaster and replaster the house. If, however, the mark breaks out again in the house after he has removed the stones and has scraped and replastered the house, then the priest shall come and look again, and if the mark is spread in the house, it is a malignant leprosy in the house. It is ceremonially unclean. He shall tear down the house, its stones and its timber, and all the plaster of the house, and shall take everything outside of the city to an unclean place. Moreover, whoever goes into the house during the time that is quarantined becomes unclean until evening. And whoever lies down in the house to rest shall wash his clothes, and whoever eats in the house shall wash his clothes. But if the priest comes in and inspects it, and the mark has not spread in the house, after the house has been replastered, he shall pronounce the house clean, because the mark has not reappeared. To cleanse the house, then, he shall take 2 birds and cedar wood and scarlet string and hyssop, and he shall kill one of the birds in an earthenware container over running water. And he shall take the cedar wood and the hyssop and the scarlet string and the living bird, and dip them in the blood of the slain bird, as well as in the running water, and sprinkle the house 7 times. So he shall cleanse the house with the blood of the bird and with the running water, along with the live bird and the cedar wood and the hyssop and the scarlet string. But he shall let the live bird go free outside the city into the open field. So he shall make atonement for the house, and it will be clean. Okay. This is the law for any mark of leprosy, even for a scale, and for the leprous garment or house, and for the swelling, and for the scab, and for the bright spot on the skin, to teach when they are unclean and when they are clean. This is the law of leprosy in regard to both persons and property. Okay, I'm down here in the footnotes, and let's see, hyssop, Leviticus 14:4. Okay. Yeah, hyssop. Okay. So it says hyssop, an aromatic plant. Let's see. Okay, so when they're talking about when there's leprosy in the house, right? Because you're like, huh? Houses can have leprosy? But remember that they were saying that leprosy actually was a word used back then probably to describe a number of skin diseases that weren't necessarily Hansen's disease or what we consider leprosy today. So it's saying here, leprosy in the house was possibly mildew or mold, and so throughout the chapter for similar instructions regarding fabric, leather, and other articles. Okay, so Leviticus 15, uh, cleansing unhealthiness. Okay. The Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, "Speak to the children of Israel and say to them, when any man has a bodily discharge, his discharge is unclean. This shall be the law concerning his uncleanness in his discharge, whether his body allows its discharge to flow or obstructs its flow. It is uncleanness in him. Every bed on which the one who has the discharge lies becomes unclean, and everything on which he sits becomes unclean. Whoever touches his bed shall wash his clothes and bathe in water and be unclean until the evening. And whoever sits on anything on which the man with the discharge has been sitting shall wash his clothes and bathe in water and be unclean until evening. Also, whoever touches the man with the discharge shall wash his clothes and bathe in water and be unclean until the evening. And if he who has the discharge spits on one who is clean, then he shall wash his clothes and bathe in water and be unclean until evening. Any saddle on which the man with the discharge rides becomes unclean. Whoever touches anything that has been under him shall be unclean until evening, and whoever carries those things shall wash his clothes and bathe in water and be unclean until evening. Whomever the one with the discharge touches without rinsing his hands in water shall wash his clothes and bathe in water and be unclean until evening. An earthenware container that the one with the discharge touches shall be broken, and every wooden container shall be rinsed in water. When the man with the discharge becomes cleansed from his discharge, he shall count off 7 days for his purification. He shall then wash his clothes and bathe his body in running water and will become clean. On the 8th day he shall take 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons and come before the Lord to the doorway of the tent of meeting and give them to the priest, and the priest shall offer them as one as a sin offering and the other as a burnt offering. So the priest shall make atonement for the man before the Lord because of his discharge. Now if any man has a seminal emission, he shall wash all his body in water and be unclean until evening. Every garment and every leather on which there is semen shall be washed with water and shall be unclean until evening. If a man lies with a woman so that there is a seminal emission, they shall both bathe in water and be unclean until evening. Wow. Okay. Can you imagine, like, even like if you're a married couple, and so you're not doing anything wrong, you're married. So every time that the two of you are intimate with each other, you're unclean and you can't be around any other people. Uh, this is a tough way to live. I remember because I think it talks about it in the New Testament, and it says somewhere about like they had so many laws, and it was very hard to kind of live up to all these laws. Yeah, I mean, so he's like, who even wants to bother with being intimate? It's like, I'm good. I got stuff to do today. Okay, I'm just saying. When a woman has a discharge, if her bodily discharge is blood, she shall continue her menstrual impurity for 7 days, and whoever touches her shall be unclean until evening. Everything on which she lies during her menstrual impurity shall be unclean, and everything on which she sits shall be unclean. Anyone who touches her bed shall wash his clothes and bathe in water and be unclean until evening. Whoever touches anything on which she sits shall wash his clothes and bathe in water and be unclean until evening. And if it is on her bed or on the thing on which she is sitting, when he touches it, he shall be unclean until evening. If a man actually lies with her so that her menstrual impurity is on him, he shall be unclean for 7 days, and every bed on which he lies shall be unclean. Now, if a woman has a flow of blood for many days, not during the time of her menstruation, or if she has a discharge beyond that period, As long as the impure discharge continues, she shall be as she is in the days of her normal menstrual impurity. She is unclean. Every bed on which she lies during the time of her discharge shall be to her like the bed of her menstrual impurity, and whatever she sits on shall be unclean, like the uncleanness of her monthly period. And whoever touches those things shall be unclean, and shall wash his clothes and bathe in water and be unclean until evening. When she is cleansed from her discharge, then she shall count off for herself 7 days, and after that she will be clean. Okay. Then on the 8th day she shall take for herself 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, and bring them to the priest at the doorway of the tent of meeting. And the priest shall offer one as a sin offering and the other as a burnt offering, and he shall make atonement for her before the Lord for her unclean discharge. Thus you shall separate the Israelites from their uncleanness, so that they do not die in their uncleanness by their defiling my tabernacle that is among them. This is the law for the one who has a discharge, and for the one who has a seminal emission, so that he is unclean by it, and for the woman who is ill because of her monthly period, and for the one who has a discharge, whether man or woman, or for a man who lies with a woman who is ceremonially unclean. Okay, so as I'm reading this, something occurs to me. Like, the original intent of God was not that they would be, that men would have multiple wives, but you would have one woman and one man, and they would come together and make a family together, right? That was God's original intent. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, so she's unclean the whole time she's during her menstruation. That's what, 7 days maybe, depending on the woman. Then she's unclean for 7 more days after that, her purification period. So I'm thinking, and everything she touches, it seems basically everything she touches is unclean. So how does that work practically? Because, women took care of the home. So women cooked all the food and they kept the house clean. So during like half of the whole entire month, potentially half the month, she can't do anything. She's not cooking. She's not cleaning. That doesn't sound right. That doesn't sound like what went down or very practical at all. I mean, I guess if a man had more than one wife, maybe they could switch off. But even I think that doesn't work together, because I think the way oftentimes it works is when women live together, they tend to sync up with their cycle. So that might not work really too well either. So anyway, that occurs to me. But maybe a rabbi could tell me how exactly that works, because I'm thinking of the logistically, that's rough, and you could say, well, the man could do it, but he's out working all day long, and she's just twiddling her thumbs waiting for this to be over. So anyhow, that just occurred to me. Probably maybe occurred to you too. Okay, so I'm going to pause. Okay, hi, I'm back. Okay, so Leviticus 16, Law of Atonement. Then the Lord spoke to Moses after the death of the 2 sons of Aaron, who had died when they irreverently approached the presence of the Lord. The Lord said to Moses, "Tell Aaron your brother that he must not enter any time into the holy place inside the veil, the Holy of Holies, before the mercy seat which is on the ark, or he will die. For I will appear in the cloud over the mercy seat. Aaron as high priest shall enter the holy place in this way, with the blood of a young bull as a sin offering, and the blood of a ram as a burnt offering. He shall put on the holy linen tunic, and the linen undergarment shall be next to his body, and he shall be belted with the linen sash, and dressed with the linen turban. These are the holy garments. He shall bathe his body in water and put them on. He shall take from the congregation of the Israelites at their expense 2 male goats as a sin offering, and 1 ram as a burnt offering. Then Aaron shall present the bull as the sin offering for himself, and make atonement for himself and for his house. He shall take the 2 goats and present them before the Lord at the doorway of the tent of meeting. Aaron shall cast lots for the 2 goats, 1 lot for the Lord the other lot for the scapegoat. Then Aaron shall bring the goat on which the Lord's lot fell and offer it as a sin offering. But the goat on which the lot fell for the scapegoat shall be presented alive before the Lord to make atonement atonement on it. It shall be sent into the wilderness as a scapegoat. Aaron shall present the bull as the sin offering for himself and make atonement for himself and for his household, the other priests. And he shall kill the bull as the sin offering for himself. He shall take a censer full of burning coals from the bronze altar before the Lord, and 2 handfuls of finely ground sweet incense, and bring it inside the veil into the most holy place, and put the incense on the fire in the censer before the Lord, so that the cloud of the incense may cover the mercy seat that is on the ark of the testimony. Otherwise he will die. He shall take some of the bull's blood and sprinkle it with his finger on the east side of the mercy seat. Also in front of the mercy seat he shall sprinkle some of the blood with his finger 7 times. Then he shall kill the goat of the sin offering that is for the sins of the people, and bring its blood within the veil into the most holy place, and do with its blood as he did with the blood of the bull, and sprinkle it on the mercy seat in front of the mercy seat. So he shall make atonement for the holy place, holy of holies, because of the uncleanness and transgressions of the Israelites, for all their sins. He shall also do this for the tent of meeting, which is among them in the midst of their uncleanness or impurities. There shall be no person in the tent of meeting when the high priest goes in to make atonement in the holy place within the veil, until it comes out, so that he may make atonement for himself, his own sins, and for his households, and for all the congregation of Israel. Then he shall go out to the altar of burnt offering in the court, which is before the Lord, and make atonement for it, and shall take some of the blood of the bull and of the goat, and put it on the horns of the altar on all the sides. With his finger he shall sprinkle some of the blood on the altar of burnt offering 7 times, and cleanse it and consecrate it from the uncleanness of the Israelites. When he has finished atoning for the holy place and the tent of the meeting and the altar, he shall present the live goat. Then Aaron shall lay both his hands on the head of the live goat and confess over it all the wickedness of the sons of Israel and all their transgressions in regard to all their sins, and he shall lay them on the head of the scapegoat, the sin bearer, and send it away into the wilderness by the hands of a man who is prepared for the task. The goat shall carry on itself all the Israelites' wickedness, carrying them to a solitary infertile land, and he shall release the goat in the wilderness. So I'm sure many of you have heard the term scapegoat. Now you know where it comes from. Many things, even though this society is not nearly as Christian as it once was, so many of our old sayings, so many things, our laws, so many things come out of the Bible, and so many, just things that we've, certainly in my generation, that we just took for granted, the norms and the mores of society, so much of that comes from a Judeo-Christian background. So there you go, scapegoat. Scapegoat is the goat that they let escape into the wilderness that carried all the sins of Israel. I think they did it like every year. Okay. Okay, so let's see. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, then Aaron shall come into the tent of meeting and take off the linen garments which he put on when he went into the holy place, or holy of holies, and shall leave them there. He shall bathe his body with water in a holy place, and put on his clothes, and come out and offer his burnt offering and that of the people, and make atonement for himself and for the people. And he shall offer up in smoke the fat of the sin offering on the altar. The man who released the goat as the sin-bearing scapegoat shall wash his clothes and bathe his body in water, and afterward he may come into the camp. The bull for the sin offering and the goat for the sin offering, whose blood was brought in to make atonement in the holy place, or holy of holies, shall be taken outside the camp. Their skins, their meat, and their waste shall be burned in the fire. Then he who burns them shall wash his clothes and bathe his body in water, and afterward he may come into the camp. An annual atonement. Okay, was that not the annual atonement? Okay. This shall be a permanent statute for you in the 7th month, which is nearly October, it says, in parentheses. On the 10th day of the month, you shall humble yourselves by fasting and not do any work, whether the native born or the stranger who lives temporarily among you. For it is on this day that the atonement shall be made for you to cleanse you. You will be clean from all your sins before the Lord. It is a Sabbath of solemn rest for you, and you shall humble yourselves. It is a permanent statute. So the priest who is anointed and ordained to serve and minister as priest in his father's place shall make atonement. He shall wear the holy linen garments and make atonement for the holy sanctuary, and he shall make atonement for the tent of meeting and for the altar of burnt offering in the court. He shall also make atonement for the priests and for all the people of the assembly. This shall be a permanent statute for you, so that atonement may be made for the children of Israel for all their sins once a year. So he did just as the Lord had commanded Moses. So yeah, all of that, what I described in the last paragraph, that was the annual atonement with the scapegoat. Okay, so I'm down here in the footnotes looking for something interesting. Okay, so it says here, the high priest was permitted to enter the most holy place only once a year. The Day of Atonement was the most sacred of all the festivals, and the prescribed purpose of this inclusive sacrifice was to atone for the sins of both the nation and the individual believer, and in this way reconcile God's chosen people to himself. Only by carefully following all of God's instructions could the high priest enter God's presence and live. Okay. Yeah. And then let's see what else. Okay. And then talking about the scapegoat, it says here, literally goat of removal, or else a name. It says Hebrew Azazel. This goat's release symbolized the carrying away of Israel's sin. Okay. And then when it's talking about like the Israelites had to humble themselves and fast and yeah, it says they have to fast, right? I believe it said that. It is assumed by many that humbling oneself is a reference to fasting, but if so, there is no reason to limit the idea to that. The rabbis taught that it was forbidden to eat, drink, wash, anoint oneself with oil for the hair, put on footwear, or have marital relations. Fasting was defined as eating less than the volume of a large date and drinking less than a mouthful of liquid. Wow. So that was so, like, you know, as I mentioned earlier, I'm in the middle of a fast, but you know, I try to do my fast from 6 a.m. to like 6 p.m. Although generally what happens is I'm busy in the morning, so I like you know, I'll eat something around 10 a.m. and then I'll hold off until like 6 p.m. and all I have is like tea with honey, and I'm drinking my tea and honey all day long, you know. So my fast isn't so horrible. I might get a little bit woozy late in the day, like you know, around 4 or 5 or 6 o'clock, but you know, it's not bad. But this is they don't play when they talk about fasting. Like, I guess when Jesus fasted, it was this type of fast, I guess. So this is interesting. When they said fasting was defined as eating less than a large date, so probably like something like that. That's all you could eat, I guess. You know, I guess all day for 24 hours. That's all you ate, I guess. And drinking less than a mouthful of liquid. Wow. So I guess when you went to clean your mouth, you were like just loving that. So that's interesting. Okay, let's see what time is, how long. Okay, so I want to go for one more chapter. That's what I feel like. This feels right to me. One more chapter. Okay, blood for atonement. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to Aaron and his sons and all the children of Israel, and say to them, this is what the Lord has commanded, saying, any man from the house of Israel who kills an ox or a lamb or goat in the camp, or kills it outside the camp, and has not brought it to the doorway of the tent of meeting to offer it as an offering to the Lord before the tabernacle of the Lord, that man shall be guilty of bloodshed. he shall shed blood, and he has shed blood, and shall be cut off from his people, excluding him from the atonement made for them. This is so that the sons of Israel may bring their sacrifices which they were sacrificing to idols in the open field where they killed them, and that they may bring them into the Lord at the doorway of the tent of meeting to the priest, and sacrifice them as sacrifices of peace offerings to the Lord. The priest shall sprinkle the blood on the altar of the Lord at the doorway of the tent of meeting, and offer that fat up in smoke as a sweet and soothing aroma to the Lord. So they shall no longer offer their sacrifices to goat idols or demons or field spirits with which they have played the prostitute. This shall be a permanent statute for them throughout their generations. So I guess even back then, early on in their nationhood, when they became a nation, and they were still surrounded, they came in contact with all these different kinds of people, and I guess were enchanted by these people's practices. And some of the Israelites, where they were out in the field sacrificing to some goat god or something. Wow. Okay. Yeah. So they're saying that if somebody was out in the field, killing a bull and whatnot, I guess a lot of times they were doing that because that's what they were up to. They were sacrificing. So this is one way to prevent that if you get caught out there doing that mess by anybody, you'd be like cut off from your people. And remember, and it says here, you be cut off from receiving atonement. But remember that being cut off from your people could mean more than just that. In the previous chapter I was reading the footnotes, being cut off from your people sometimes also meant being executed or being banished, which that's a pretty rough thing to go through, to say the least. Okay. Blah, blah, blah. Then you shall say to them, any man from the house of Israel or any of the strangers living temporarily among you, who offers a burnt offering or sacrifice and does not bring it to the doorway of the tent of meeting to offer it to the Lord, shall be cut off from his people, excluding him from the atonement made for them. Any man from the house of Israel or any stranger living temporarily among you, who eats any blood, against that person shall I set my face, and I will cut him off from his people, excluding him from the atonement made for them. For the life of the flesh is in the blood, and I have given it to you as on the altar to make atonement for your souls. For it is the blood that makes atonement, by reason of the life which it represents. Therefore I have said to the sons of Israel, no person among you may eat blood, nor may any stranger living temporarily among you eat blood. So when any Israelite or any stranger living temporarily among them catches any ceremonially clean animal or bird when hunting, he shall pour out its blood and cover it with earth. Okay, so now I had been wondering that as I'm reading all this stuff, and you keep hearing from time to time, God is telling them, don't eat the blood, don't eat blood, don't eat blood. And I'm thinking, what exactly is the significance behind that? So now we know God is saying it's because the life is in the blood, and because all the time he's doing blood sacrifices, right? All the time, they're sprinkling the blood on the altar, killing the animal, draining the blood and sprinkling it, and so that's very special. So I guess for someone to eat it and then it comes out of them, as waste, I guess just all of that is just kind of, I guess, maybe really disrespecting that sacrifice and what it means to God. So that's interesting. And now I know. And they said not only pour it out, but cover it with earth. Okay. For in regard to the life of all flesh, its blood is the same as its life. Therefore I said to the Israelites, you are not to eat the blood of any flesh, for the life of all flesh is in its blood. Whoever eats it shall be cut off, excluding him from the atonement made for them. Every person who eats an animal which dies of natural causes or was torn by a predator, whether he is native born or a stranger, he shall wash his clothes and bathe in water and be ceremonially unclean until evening. Then he will become clean. But if he does not wash his clothes or bathe his body, he shall bear his guilt, for it will not be borne by the sacrifice of atonement. Okay, so that's interesting. That kind of crossed my mind when I was reading just now, a few chapters back, a few paragraphs back. Because I'm like, they're getting atoned every year. So I'm like, so what if somebody does something and they don't go through the effort, because a chapter so back, we were talking about things that a person can do to make it right, like they have to pay, like if they steal something, they pay it back with 1/5 more, or whatever, however they make it right. But what if somebody doesn't bother to do that? They just like act like it never happened, and they say nobody knows, right? So they're gonna act like it didn't happen. But it's saying that if you do some mess like that, that the yearly atonement is not going to cover that, which makes sense, right? Okay. Okay, so I'm down here in the footnotes. Let's see, what do I see that might be interesting? Oh, okay. That's interesting. Okay. It says here, let me go back to 17:4. And okay, and has not brought it to the doorway. So it's talking about any man from the house of Israel who kills an ox or a lamb or a goat in the camp, or kills it outside the camp, and has not brought it to the doorway of the tent of meeting to offer it as an offering to the Lord before the tabernacle of the Lord, that man shall be guilty of bloodshed. He has shed blood, and shall be cut off from his people, in brackets, excluding him from the atonement made for them. Okay, then down here it says, at this point, the Israelites were not permitted to eat meat at will, but after the animal was offered as a burnt offering, most of it was returned to the owner as a gift from God. Okay, so that's nice. So there was like, you weren't just like wasting, a lot of food. You weren't just wasting the animal, just, all that, like a bull, like that's a lot of good meat, that feed a family for a little bit, I guess, right? So that's nice that most of the meat, you like, once you killed it and you brought it to be to the priest, for your sin offering, or whatever, or free will offering, whatever it was, you got most of that meat back to take back, home for yourself and for your family. So that's great. Um, let's see, anything else? What's the 17:11? Okay. It says, for the life of the flesh is in the blood, and down here in the footnotes it says literally the soul, the life, the soul of, is in the what the life, the life of the flesh, or the soul of the flesh is in the blood. Okay, blah blah blah. Okay, 17:13. So when any Israelite or any stranger living temporarily among them catches any ceremonially clean animal or bird when hunting, he shall pour out its blood and cover it with earth. And it says literally an animal or bird which may be eaten. That would be ceremonially, that's also ceremonially clean. And okay, so that was interesting stuff. And let's see what's happening. Okay, the next one so that was Leviticus 14 through 17 I just read. And tomorrow, God willing, I'll pick up at Leviticus 18. Which is laws of immoral relations. So this one for tomorrow is going to be, I guess, what would be today maybe considered a little bit controversial, because I think this is going to be talking about, basically, yeah, who can be, who can be intimate with who, and so as you know, it's amazing, the past 30 years, so many things have changed so rapidly about, who's okay, and what this lifestyle is okay or it's not okay. And so that's going to deal with that. So if that's something you're interested in, because I know that there are people who say, oh, the Bible doesn't say that, or God loves everybody. So you're gonna hear tomorrow what the Bible has to say about that. And what you do with that information, that's on you. But you get to hear tomorrow, what does the Bible actually say? Okay, for your clarity. Okay. Okay, so I look forward to you being in my Bible study tomorrow. And if you're watching, you watch my videos. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Please like and subscribe, and uh, and may God bless you real good.